This week, two federal appeals cases issued conflicting rulings regarding the subsidies that up to 5 million consumers receive to help relieve their financial health insurance burden. A panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia struck down the law, ruling that the insurance subsidies were illegal in 36 states. Less than 2 hours later, a panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 4th District ruled the opposite on a separate case. This is yet another major hit to the Affordable Care Act, and it's only one in many issues that have revealed the flaws in this legislation.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Well, since that law was passed, the American people have been finding out what's in it. There have been over 40 Obamacare delays and administrative fixes, continuous website glitches, and over 100 lawsuits filed. Now, with the most recent rulings regarding subsidies, the price of health insurance could go up for many Americans. 87% of the 5.4 million enrolled in the federal exchange receive federal help. On average, the subsidies cut the cost of insurance by 76%. Without the subsidies, the average consumer in New Jersey would pay $317 more a month. In Indiana, $336 more a month. In Mississippi, $415 more per month, a state that has 94% of its consumers receiving subsidies. Overall, the 36 states using the federal exchange would lose out on over $3.6 billion of government subsidies, a figure affecting well over half the population of the country.
The Obama administration said it's going to ask the full D.C. Circuit Court to review the decision in the district case. But if the ruling is upheld, it'll be a major blow to the legislation. It'll essentially shut down the exchange system. Joining me now is Emeritus Professor of Neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins and is a Fox News contributor as well, Dr. Ben Carson. Doctor, good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's good to be with you. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Carson, first of all, react to the ruling itself and what it really does mean to Americans in 36 states.
Well, basically, the law, which of course is voluminous, states that the subsidies are for people who work through state exchanges. There are those who want to come along and say, well, that's not what it really means. And what Congress really meant is that those subsidies should be available for anybody, regardless of how they're signed up and whether it's a federal or a state exchange. It seems to me like the logical thing to do, rather than putting on your magician's hat and trying to figure out what Congress meant. Why don't you send it back to Congress and ask them, what did you guys mean? It's not like they're in Timbuktu. They're right around the corner.
Well, they're on vacation right now, though, Dr. Carson. That's the problem. They're going to take 5 weeks off while, all of this is going on.
Yeah, even if we have to wait 5 weeks, we can still find out what they meant when they said it. Because I think they would be, quite frankly, quite afraid to send it back because, as Nancy Pelosi said, you got to pass it before you find out what's in it. Now that we found out what's in it, there's not a chance that it would pass. So they're not going to send it back there.
You make a very, I think, important point, is that words mean something. And when it's written into the law, and we were just told this how many times, this is the law of the land. I remember that phrase over and over, the law of the land. Well, if it's the law of the land and they wrote it all screwed up, I guess we're either going to have to change the law of the land, which means we could have changed it all along, or we're going to have to admit that they really didn't have a clue what was in it. So
right.
As we look at this thing going forward, what alarms you most? What is it that we still haven't yet encountered out of Obamacare
right.
that we're going to?
Well, of course, you look at all these delays that have occurred, and particularly the delay in the employer mandate, which has now been pushed all the way back to January, well beyond the November elections. When that hits, there are going to be millions, tens of millions of Americans who will be affected by that, who will see skyrocketing premiums and inability to get the insurance that they want. And if, in fact, they can't get subsidies because of the way the exchanges are set up, it's going to make it that much worse. And the real problem, as far as I'm concerned, is not the glitches with the computer sign-up system and all of these other problems. The real problem is that we've taken the most important thing that people have, their health care, and we've put it in the hands of bureaucrats. The VA scandal shows us what happens when you take layers of bureaucrats and you put them between the people and health care providers. This is a non-starter. Why do we have to make something so important into a political issue? And we do have the ability to provide good health care for people, and it can be in their own hands and in the hands of their health care providers. This is not necessary unless you are attempting to gain control of the populace.
Dr. Carson, we only got about a minute left, but I'd love to get a prescription from you, because every time I go to the doctor, I always get a prescription. I'd like Dr. Ben Carson's prescription in a minute or so. What should we be writing out for health care reform in America?
Well, bottom line, I mean, there's a lot that you can read, in the books, but healthcare savings accounts are so important because it puts the care back into your control. You get to decide whether you need an x-ray, you get to decide birth control pills, there's no Hobby Lobby situation. All of these things are taken out of your health savings account. You give people flexibility within a family. So dad's $500 short, he can get it from his wife, his mother, his sister, his daughter. It makes every family their own insurance company with no middleman, gives you enormous flexibility. You're not impinging upon your major health care, so the cost of that goes down enormously, and you make that available across state lines. That puts it back in the hands of people. You have a variety of ways that you can fund those HSAs, all of which would cost considerably less than this debacle.
It's a great prescription. It's one I have believed in for a long time, and I think you are exactly on target. That is real health care reform. Dr. Ben Carson, thank you so much. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Well, he says that if we want to change in Washington, we got to change the people that we send to Washington. New GOP Senate nominee from Georgia, David Perdue, is joining us next. And later, Richard Dreyfuss and Dinesh D'Souza. Stay with us.